Hey, my name's James Nicholson. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I want to talk about the today announced, this has already had its first reading in Parliament today, the Renters' Rights Bill. Now, this was something that nearly happened under the Conservative government. It was called the Renters' Reform Bill at that stage. Labour has taken this on. They've rebranded it the Renters' Rights Bill. I'm going to put that on the board because I'm going to forget it and keep calling it the Reform one. So it's the Renters' Rights Bill. And basically this impacts everyone. So if you rent a property, this impacts you. If you are a landlord or want to be a landlord at some point, this also impacts you. Now, what I want to do is ask you to smash the like button on this video quickly because that will get more viewers on this. I want more people to know about what's happening here and share this video. I don't always ask you to share this, but share this. Share it with a landlord you know, share it with tenants. You'll all have different opinions on this. I'm expecting the comments to go crazy on this one. Keep them respectful, please, down below. But do put in with your opinion on what you think's happening here. And always subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification just to get more updates on this as it goes through Parliament. So the Renters' Reform Bill, the Renters' Rights Bill, as it's now called, has its first reading in Parliament. And they are talking about moving this through very quickly. Now, that could happen because Labour have such a majority in Parliament. It's going to have less hurdles and obstacles that it would have had in the previous Parliament earlier this year. And that's why the Conservatives didn't actually get this complete, because they couldn't get an agreement on everything. And so I want to talk to you today about what's included. I'm also going to post a link in the description to an ebook that you can grab for free that will talk about everything included in this, so you've got your own copy as well. So what is going to happen here? There's a lot to go through, so let's go through this. Now, firstly, they've got included here something called it's Awaab's law. And Awaab's law was about a young boy who unfortunately passed away because the social housing that he stayed in was very mouldy and it caused him to get ill, and unfortunately he passed away. This law was imposed on social housing providers, and it meant that when you get mould in the property, once it's reported, it has to be dealt with within 14 days. Now, this is getting put onto private landlords. The same law is getting rolled down to the private rental sector. Now, that's important that if you have a property as a landlord, you do need to get that resolved. That is very, very important. I don't disagree with Awaab's law as well, but I do see that some landlords might have difficulty with these time preferences that we've got in this now. 14 days might seem like a long time, but if suddenly everyone's reporting problems, it could be something that will be difficult to resolve. So it is important. I'm not arguing with that, but I do just think that the 14-day window is quite a short window to get things resolved. Sometimes mould needs literally brickwork cut out, tanking done, all sorts of different things. It depends. So that's something that will be looked at and implemented in this. So that's step one. Next is no bidding wars. I don't actually come across this much where I have property, but I'll explain what they mean by this. So in some areas, particularly cities, when you go to look at a property to rent it, it might be listed for £1,000. And then what the agents do is ask people to submit a rent offer. And then, of course, people that really want to get that property in areas that don't have enough rental stock will put a higher offer in order to get that. And it causes bidding wars. In fact, that gets the landlord more rent, which is good for the landlord, but it's not really fair on tenants. So that's going to be outlawed. What you list the property for will be the maximum rent you'll be able to achieve from that. So That I haven't come across, but I do know that it happens, and so it won't impact me, but it will impact some landlords, and that's one consideration for them. So that's one thing that they've got to sort out there. They will be able to, tenants will be able to challenge rent increases. So what does that mean? Well, if a landlord increases the rent and it seemed to be unfair, there's no rental caps or any indication that will be rental caps in this bill. But if the tenant feels that they're unfairly getting their rent increased, maybe the landlord's increasing it to try to get them to leave the property, that does happen. And so they will be able to challenge that with a property ombudsman. Now, what you'd need to look at there is the landlord charging market rate, and how much of a percentage have they gone up? So let's just say they were doing 500 quid rent and then they suddenly said, we now want 700 or 750. That's a 50% increase. That wouldn't be seen likely as fair unless potentially the market rate was 750 and maybe the landlord just didn't increase it for years and now needed to increase it. That's a grey area. The ombudsman would be then looking at resolving that as an issue. So tenants will get that ability to challenge this, and that's giving them more peace of mind. So that will mean tenancies are better for the tenant, which is good. You will be able to only increase rent increases will only be allowed to happen once per year. One increase per year. Now, you could do more than that. I've never done that, but I would find it quite hard to go back to a tenant morally and say, look, I'm putting your rent up twice in a year. People are doing this. This is because this whole bill is because some landlords are taking the mick. A small percentage of landlords are taking the mick, and some of them are putting rent up multiple times in a year. That is not fair on the tenant, and because of that, there is now this blanket ban that you'll only be able to increase rent one time per calendar year. I don't have a problem with that myself. I've never done it more than twice. I've been a landlord for nearly 20 years. I've never done 2 increases in 1 year. So for me, that's fine. Where that could be a problem though, is let's just say interest rates suddenly went up to 10% and the landlord wasn't able to increase their rent in that scenario. Hopefully that won't ever happen. But if it did happen, then we could have a major problem with landlords needing to sell. So have I covered everything on there? I think I have on that first post-it note. There's more. Next is pets. This one, I know a lot of you in the comments, especially the tenants, have major feelings about this. I don't have a problem with this either. You, as a landlord, if the tenant requests a pet, you've got 28 days to decide, and it has to be reasonable that you look to accept that pet in the first instance. So that's the stance, is that you would look to accept that pet in the property. Now, you may be able to not accept the pet if you, for example, owned a leasehold flat. As the landlord, you own a leasehold flat, and maybe in that leasehold, no pets are allowed in the block. That would be reasonable grounds, because it would be a breach of the lease by the landlord to not accept the pet. So that's interesting there. Now, if they do get a pet, the landlord can require that the tenant gets pet insurance to protect the property of the landlord, which is a fair and reasonable thing to ask. And so that would be the trade-off. So there's a little bit of a win for the landlords there, more of a win for the tenants here. I think most of this bill is better, significantly better for tenants. And as I said, that's because some landlords have absolutely let everybody down by not looking after their properties and being unfair. Next, this one. This one, I think, will be the one that will get all the headlines. Well, there's 2 parts. This will be one of them. And that is decent home standards. Now, what does that mean? Well, what it means is that if your property isn't up to a good standard, which will be deemed by the Property Ombudsman, then you can get fined by your local council £7,000, and the tenant can stop paying rent in that time as well. So the £7,000 fine, that once that passes and landlords start getting that fine, I think the landlords are going to get shamed in the papers. I think that's going to be headlines, especially in local papers. And so that will humiliate the landlords into getting their properties up to date. Now, how many landlords don't have a decent home standards property? Well, the government are saying 21% of properties, 21% of properties are not at the required standard. They don't state what that is. That's going to worry a lot of landlords. I think that all of this stuff that we've seen so far is going to contribute to more of a landlord exodus. Now, what that will also do is mean rents will rise significantly. If you look at all the articles around the Renters' Rights Bill, everybody, the BBC, Reuters, everyone is saying that this bill is going to significantly push rents up. That's based off the fact that more landlords are likely to quit. There's more that the landlord will need to do to get the quality of the property up. And there's more risk to the landlord that they won't get paid or they'll get fined. So they need to make a better margin in order for this to work for them. So I do think that that is true. I do think landlords are going to quit even more, faster than we've ever seen. But I also think that there's opportunity there as well. I think if you run your properties well, I think you could do quite well off this, because other landlords will be out the market, the rents will be higher, there's more money to be made for good landlords. Now, when we buy a property, I always do a full refurb, sometimes back to brick. I'll put new kitchens in, new bathrooms in, new carpets in. So I don't have a massive problem with this. With the Awaab's law, I have had instances of mould in my properties. Literally the property down the road, I had a lovely couple from India that lived there at the moment. They didn't really understand about the ventilation. They haven't had to do that when they've lived in India. They literally, this is their first time living in the UK. And that required some education, right? Just when you hang your washing up, open some windows. They did that, then there wasn't a problem. So I don't think that you're going to get unfairly penalised as a landlord if you can show them that, look, maybe you've got a little bit of mold because you haven't had some ventilation in there. Open the windows every now and again, that will be gone. But if it's damp and it's rotten brickwork and stuff like that, then you've got to fix that quickly. So what else is there? There is more, much, much more. So there is going to be a digital database. So a digital DB, and that's going to include landlord's details. It's going to include like what they've done, the projects they've done, the properties they've got. I'm not sure how much of that will be open to the public, but agents will be able to see that for sure. Councils will be able to see that for sure. I don't have a problem with that. Again, I think for the bad landlords, that's terrible news. And that's going to mean they're going to have to really up their game. If you do have problems, you do act as a bad landlord, you're going to get outed by this. So I don't think that's going to be great for bad landlords. Next is benefits. Now, you do get some right move houses to rent, flats to rent that you'll see where they say no benefits. That's now going to be illegal to do. Now, I do think that people will get round that, if I'm honest. So if you run your property through an estate agent, the estate agent will present you 3 or 4 people as options that you can have as a tenant. You're not going to be able to say that you don't want the person with benefits, but I do still think that some landlords will pick the person that is employed, right? I just do think that that is going to still happen. So I don't know how they can police that really, but you won't be able to obviously push people away in your marketing and your advertising. So that's something that's important. You're not going to be able to not have people that have got children. I've never seen that advertised, but I guess it happens. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the bill, right? And so you won't be able to refuse someone that has children. I think that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. In fact, probably about 30% of my properties, they have children. And I think they're actually good tenants because they stay there longer because they make it a family home. It's harder to move with tenants and stuff like that. What else have we got? Periodic tenancies. No periodic tenancies even. Periodic tenancies. So what does this mean? Let's say I rent a property now. We'll get someone in my property on a 1 year AST, assured short hold tenancy. And then each year, my agent will come back to me and say, do you want to renew? Before you renew, we need to make sure we got the gas safe. We need to make sure we got EICR up to date every 5 years. All of those things get checked off at that time, which is kind of good. And then they'll say to me, do you want to increase the rent or do you want to keep it as it is? Where do you feel it should be? And normally, the agent is the one that guides me on that. They'll say, look, the market rate at the moment is here. This has been a good tenant now. And they're often on the tenant side and say, look, they paid on time. They've been a good tenant. I would advise you not to probably increase it or just a fraction. So it's still a good deal for that tenant. So that's not going to happen anymore. So they're going to get a tenancy now. It's just going to be a rolling tenancy forever, right? This is a worry for some people. So the tenant can give 2 months notice at any time. Here's why some people are worried about that. So what the concern is, and what I've seen a couple of articles in the press talking about this, is you could come to London, for example, and say, I want to come to London for the summer. I'll rent this property from somebody and pay you 2 months. As soon as you move in, you could give notice and leave. So you can have your property for the summer and then leave. The landlord's got all the costs of reletting the property, the agent, the marketing, and all that kind of stuff. So lots of landlords don't feel that that's particularly fair. The longer term periodic stuff, I feel after it gets past a year, I think that my opinion is that the tenancy should be a year first and then it can just go rolling. I don't have a problem with that. But I think both parties should have some commitment because it does cost a lot of money to have viewings done for all the legal stuff that you've got to do, for the tenancy checks, the inventory. Like when I get my first month's rent from a property, I probably only get about 15% of it. There's so many check-in fees and all this stuff that just wipes out that profit. I need the tenant to be there at least 6 months till I start making good money. So that is one problem for a lot of people. Next is the Landlord Ombudsman. I've mentioned that. But the Ombudsman is going to be where all arguments are sorted for both parties. That could be good. What's very important here is that very, very important at this stage is that there is enough people in the Ombudsman to deal with these inquiries. What you don't want is for both sides. You don't want the tenant to say, hey, I've got a problem with this landlord, but the Ombudsman's so busy, the first appointment is in 6 months. And I think that could happen quite early on in this because it's going to get overwhelmed with people. So they need to recruit and educate and get good people in that for that to work. And let's hope that they do. Next, and the last one, is the worst one for landlords. And lots of people, I believe, will quit as a landlord because of this. And that's Section 21 being abolished. Now, the government has said that will be gone by next summer. That's fast. That is not long at all. Section 21 is no-fault evictions. It means that for any reason, you can get rid of your tenant. Now, a lot of people will use that in unfair ways. For sure, that happens. I have never even served a Section 21. I've nearly had to when I've had a bad tenant that was causing problems, but they left, fortunately for me. But yeah, you do get times where you might need to. Maybe you've got a tenant that's annoying people in the block of flats, unsociable, and it's just an easy way to get the tenant out without using a Section 8, taking months to go to court. So Section 21 is going to be abolished, that the government are saying will happen by next summer, which is really, really fast. That could happen because I said at the beginning, Labour have such a big majority, they're going to not get much resistance on this. They can get lots of stuff voted through quite quickly. I feel, personally, with all of this stuff happening and the fact that this has happened so quickly after Labour's got into power, you're going to see more landlords quit. You've got the capital gains tax, which is a big problem for them. They've got that incentive to get out before March 2025. Capital gains tax is likely to be announced in the budget, that it's going to increase significantly because of the black hole that Labour have said they found with billions of extra debt that the government's got. That's a hard deadline. And so if landlords list now that are thinking about getting out the market, they can get out and keep more of their profits from that. So you could see a big landlord exodus. I've done a video this week where 30,000 of you have watched about landlords are listing properties faster than ever. Do go and check that out. So look, there's lots in this bill. I agree with a lot of it. I think it's good to have better stuff for tenants. But I also think if you're going to get rid of Section 21, then you need something on the back end of that if I do get a bad tenant that doesn't pay my rent, that beats my property up, I need to be able to get rid of them fast. Right now, with that Section 21 being abolished, if you look at this bill, there is nothing in there, zero in there on court reform. How are they going to deal with all these extra court cases? They're not. And it's going to be a real difficult situation. And I think the outcome of all of this is sky-high rents. I think you're going to see a lot of landlords leave. I think you're going to see those properties sold. Maybe they'll go to residential and those people are sorted, but there's still always going to be people that need to rent, and they're going to see massively higher rents by 2025. That's my prediction on this. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Keep it civilized, guys. Do check the ebook out. Just grab the ebook. It goes into detail on all of this stuff in there, and that will be useful to have. So just click on the link, grab your ebook, and we'll email it to you straight away. Do check out all the other content on my channel. Thousands of you are watching this channel every single week now, so subscribe so you don't lose it. Hit the bell. Check out all the other content on my channel, including this video right here.